Good afternoon. Welcome. I will maybe wait a couple more minutes to see if more people join, and otherwise I start and people can join a little bit later. And I see that Katrine also put already on the record, so that's one thing less that I have to do. So perfect. I have done several webinars since now, but this is still feeling strange. It's like talking to yourself. So you see yourself, you hear yourself, and you see no reactions of people. But it still is kind of weird. But yeah, no problem. We get used to it after a while. So hi Jonas, how are you doing? Some more people are coming in. So I see Quinten, Else. Hi Else, how are you? Some known faces and some people I still don't know. So nice to virtually meet you. I would say Celia is also there. Hi Celia, how are you? I would say I start now, and then afterwards, if you have questions, you can always ask it through the chat, or afterwards in the Q&A session, of course. Also feel free to ask any questions. So first of all, I want to thank all of you for joining me today in this presentation. What I will talk to you about today is, I will change to my screen so I can move the button. So I will talk to you a little bit first about MultiSafepay. So although I hope that most of you already know MultiSafepay, I will give you some short insights about the company. But the main topic of the day will be, of course, online frauds. So I will try to cover in these 25 minutes, what is online fraud? What can be the financial impact on your revenue? How can both you and how do fraud engines recognize fraud? We'll discuss a little bit about chargebacks and also how some tips that we will give you how to have a user-friendly and at the same time also safe checkout. So let's first start with a short introduction about MultiSafepay. MultiSafepay is founded about 20 years ago now by a guy named Olaf Geurs. And Olaf, he's Dutch, so that's also why we have a Dutch financial license, but of course with a European scope. And Olaf is a technical guy, so he had always in his mind, like, I want to make a company, but always with technology first. So today, since 20 years ago, when we started with one person, the founder, until today, we are already more than 140 employees, of which more than 50% is, or are better said, are developers and technical staff. So we really care a lot about building and having everything in-house also managed. Up till now, we have 3 locations. So we have 3 offices. One is our headquarters in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. We have the office in Munich, Germany, and also our international office in Malaga, Spain, which is where I'm now broadcasting from. So although I have the idea that it's better weather now in Belgium than it is here in Malaga. So lucky you. And then from these 3 locations, we have always local teams that are serving our customers in the whole of Europe. When we talk about security, safety, I want to highlight just really quickly that we have multiple data centers, and this gives us like the necessary performance to be able to back up all the data, but also to scale up. So in case that something would happen, we always have like a backup plan, so we can guarantee our 99.99% of uptime that we are maintaining at this moment. Why do we do what we do? So I've been a marketing student, and Elsa here might have been even one of my teachers about 21 years ago. So and even then we were already talking about mission, vision, how important is it? Well, the mission, the vision of Olaf has always been, I want to be a one-stop shop. So I want to have one platform that is in between consumer and merchant. So we are a collecting PSP, which means that we are the one that receives the money from the consumer and then passes it to the merchant. We became also an acquirer, a processor, and now we are very soon launching also our omni-channel solution. It's not about the impression, Else. It's just that my memory 20 years later, too much mojitos and chupitos, I think. So, so about MultiSafepay, the power of one platform. Why is it important? I will go a little bit deeper into it later in the presentation. But also, sorry that this is not as clear, maybe the picture as I would have liked it to be. But the main idea is that everything is managed within MultiSafepay. So we don't use any third parties, nor to do risk management, fraud management, the acquiring. So everything is managed in-house. We are directly connected to the schemes. So basically, there's only one stop between the consumer's money that goes to the merchant's pocket. But I didn't come here to talk to you about how great MultiSafepay is, which it is, of course, but we came to talk about online fraud. So what is online fraud? Online fraud basically is defined in Wikipedia and in general as all fraud that is committed using the internet. So this can have many forms. This can be from let's say, from dating scamming, from phishing emails. This can also be identity theft, and it can be about online transactions. So, and we talk about online transactions. I first want to go one step back, and I want to talk to you when we talk about payments, we always have to distinguish two types of payments. There are card present and card not present. Card present payments means that you go to a physical location with your physical card and you pay, for example, in a bar, in a restaurant, in a shop, in a supermarket. So let's say that the physical card passes from the buyer to the seller. So he or she can control it. When it's card not present, as the word itself says itself, the card is not present. So it's only needed to fill in the card details, which makes it also a lot more attractive for fraudsters, of course. So card not present can be phone orders, can also be mail orders, but mostly is online. Why is it so attractive? Because first of all, they don't have to have the physical card, so they can just save the card details, which can be digitally saved. So it's way easier, but it's also a lot more difficult to get caught, because as a seller, it's really hard to identify the one that is buying online. While when you're at the shop, they can even as an extra measure say, okay, can I just double check your ID card, which was more the rule before. Nowadays you don't see it anymore, but before it was really done. Like, can I please see your ID card, and I can also verify your signature. So, but we are going to focus today on the card not present fraud. And when we talk about the e-commerce fraud, I would like to focus on two main reasons, let's say. So you have the payment fraud, identity theft, which is basically mainly it's about stolen cards, but it can also be about, for example, the theft of email addresses, the theft of user accounts, of personal devices, where the fraudster wants to act as if they were a real customer. Okay. And then we have the friendly fraud, which is even more difficult to detect, which is where a consumer or a customer, it can be a legitimate customer or it can be otherwise, but that's where a customer pays for an item and then claims that or they didn't receive it or it's damaged, so they do a chargeback. Okay, so these are the two types of fraud that I want to discuss with you today. Now, what can be the impact on your revenue? It's a lot. So when I was in the first presentation this morning of Y5, the results of the research that they did, and one of the questions was, is, for example, for consumers, is online payment a main concern? And it wasn't. But online payment fraud for the web shops should be a concern, because, and it is, because if we see that almost 3/4 of the businesses says for them it's a major concern, and if we see the numbers, we can understand. I mean, by 2024, it is estimated that it could be up until more than $25 million annually. So each year, e-commerce businesses lose up or even more than $25 billion dollars per year. So that is more or less calculated as 1.8% of revenue that you lose each year as an e-commerce company. If you sell several millions per year, that's an amazing amount that you can lose. And also, there has been done a study that for each €1 of fraud that you receive from chargeback, you have an extra 2.94 euros extra costs. These costs can be cost for chargeback fee, can be cost for example, for the merchandise distribution, the fraud investigation, legal prosecution. So basically, each €1 in chargeback at 2.95 euros more in costs that you have. So that's a real immediate impact of fraud on your business. But we also have to take into account, and a lot of times it is not, false positive. What are false positives? Well, that's basically a transaction that is stopped or that is flagged as fraud, that is declined, but in fact it was a legitimate transaction. So basically we are stopping a customer that's a completely legitimate customer from buying at our shop because our fraud filters say, no, this is not valid. That's also an impact that we have to take into account. And last but not least, the impact on your brand and your customer loyalty. You would be surprised how little, for the persons that work in the payment industry, and I have several colleagues here, you will admit, for us, it's good that not too many people are aware of the chargeback possibility. But you can see that is a topic when you talk about fraud, because a consumer thinks that it's your shop that did it. So they blame the online seller for the charge or for the fraud. So they are most likely not going to buy again at your shop, but also they're going to tell their friends what happened at your shop. So don't forget that impact. That's way more difficult to measure, but it's also a huge impact that we have there. So what can you look for? How can you try to discover, let's say, when we are having a fraud attempt or real fraud that is going on? So first of all, when you see a significant and unexpected increase in your number of orders, be aware. So I know if all of a sudden from 20 orders a day that you go to 100, your first reaction would be, yeah, this is my lucky day, or this is my good day. If you did a campaign, perfect. If you didn't do anything and you didn't really expect this increase, be aware. When it's too good to be true, mostly it is too good to be true. So this might be an attempt from hackers or from fraudsters that are trying to put a lot of transactions through your system. Also, when you see that one same person, one single buyer, tries to do several transactions in a short time in your web shop, be aware. Okay. It can be legitimate, but always let us have an alarm light that goes up. Also, when one same buyer uses different emails, different email addresses, which are mostly, and that's true, you can recognize it by the Hotmails, the Gmails, etc. And mostly, although they get more and more inventive, but mostly it's like with a lot of numbers and characters into the email address, because they are freely created, so they have to go fast. Also, when you see, although this may be a little bit more difficult to check, that if you see, for example, that transaction is declined and the same buyer does seconds later, which is really improbable that they can put again everything in the shopping basket, do again the payment. If seconds later you have another attempt, that might also look like somebody is trying to do fraud on your website. And another topic that I would also take into consideration, if you see, for example, an unusual high order amount and people want it delivered to a pickup point, with this not being said that pickup points are not safe, but just stop for a second, ask yourself and check it. So these might all be little signs, let's say, that fraud might be going on. Okay. But there's also the part of course, the PSP. So what do the fraud engines look for? So this will give you a little bit of insight in what we look for. So basically, if there's a large number of transactions from the same IP address, from the same email address, or even if the same card has been used more than X amount of times, so that can be 2, 3, 5. That's something that we can put together with the merchants in the last 12, 24, 48 hours. So these parameters are all adjustable, configurable together with our customers. We also check the country of the IP address and we compare it to the country of the credit card, in this case, or of the credit card issuer. And of course, we are connected to the latest databases where they report the fraudulent cards. Which is also, I want to give you a tip, whichever PSP that you work with, always check that you send as much information as possible within the transaction. The more information you send to the PSP, the more we can check if there are possible indications that this might be a fraud. So always send email address, name, telephone number, whatever, all the information that you send. The more you send, the more we can put it into our filters and the more we can protect you from frauds. But let's imagine that even with everything that we did, a transaction went through and it goes to a chargeback. Okay, so what does a chargeback mean? A chargeback means that a consumer, a cardholder, let's say, goes to his bank and says, look, I don't agree with this transaction. I want my money back. At that moment, the bank of the consumer contacts the bank of the merchant, the acquiring bank, to let them know, look, a chargeback came in. What can you do at that moment as a merchant? First of all, check if this order has already been shipped. If it wasn't shipped, stop it and do immediately a refund. So you just refund the money and you stop the order. Second possibility might be the goods are shipped, but they're still not delivered. Contact as soon as possible the transport company, stop it. Stop the order, the same, do a refund. If it has been delivered and the goods are already away, then you can fight the chargeback. Okay, and this is something that you can do together with your PSP. Okay, we have, or we can distinguish mainly three types of chargebacks. We have disputes, we have the fraud chargebacks, and we have processing errors. Okay, fraud chargebacks, they are mainly with stolen cards. Okay, this is where really the fraud filters that I talked to you about before, this is where they come into place. Disputes, that's a little bit more difficult to prevent. Why? Because disputes are basically the chargebacks where a consumer has bought an item, received it, and then says, for example, okay, I don't agree with the quality, or this is not as described, or maybe I didn't receive it, or there was, for example, when we talk about events, there was a cancellation of an event. So these are disputes. Okay, so what can you do here? Basically, you cannot see a lot in advance, but what can you do, for example, for people that say I didn't receive it, is make sure that when the product is delivered, that you have the signature of the person. Okay, and this is something that you should discuss with your logistic company, of course. That, for example, at the moment of delivery, they ask for a signature always, which can also be tricky. I ordered a product like a couple of months ago when I was in Belgium at the house of my parents. Nobody was home. They put it into the mailbox and they signed in my name. So knowing me, the system, if I would have wanted, I could have done a chargeback. But of course, I'm an honest person and I didn't do it. So, but that would be a dispute. So the money would be charged back from the merchant. The merchant would say, okay, I have your signature. I would say, this is not my signature. Probably the postman did it because I didn't sign it. So always watch out that you have a good delivery procedure also. Okay, and then the third reason code for chargeback is processing errors. This might be, for example, that the refund was done, but it wasn't processed correctly, or for example, the transaction was charged double. These, of course, don't occur a lot, but they can also occur. I will give you some insights, and what you see on this screen are MultiSafepay numbers. MultiSafepay numbers from 2020. Okay, so in 2020, we have received 55% of the chargeback were disputes, 45% were frauds. Okay, of this totality of chargebacks, 50% of them, the merchant decided, I'm not going to fight it. I accept the chargeback, or they didn't reply. So they just didn't reply. They didn't see it. They didn't want to reply, whatever. So 50% were lost. The other 50%, there the merchant delivered the information, documentation, and we fought the chargeback. Just to give you an idea, last year we won around 25% of those disputes and fraud. Okay, fraud are a little bit more difficult to win because, of course, if it's fraud, it's fraud. But we won 25%, while the acquire industry standard is between 10 and 15%. So we did a really good job last year from our fraud department. Second value that I want to share with you is the chargeback per order ratio. So how many chargebacks come in per order? If we take a look, this is for Q4 2020, okay? So if we take a look at Visa MasterCard, they had a chargeback per order ratio of 0.8%. So 0.8% of the totality of orders that came in with Visa MasterCard were chargebacked. MultiSafepay is at 0.06%. So that's a really good number. Also, I have to admit, there are some PSPs that do the really high risk. So if you go in hotel, travel, the number of chargeback is way higher. Okay, so we don't do those merchants. That's also why there is such a big difference. But even 0.06 is a very low rate. Also good to mention is the moment that you as a merchant go over 1% of ratio, you go to a special MasterCard and Visa program, which is a monitoring program. First of all, you get a fine, okay? Because they say you have too many chargebacks. You're not doing good. You're not doing a good job. So first of all, you get a fine, and then later it's you are continuously monitored. And even if you change PSP, it will be really hard, because the moment that you try to change PSP, if they see that you're in the monitoring program, most PSPs will say, you're too dangerous for us, we don't do it. Okay, so watch out, control chargebacks, control fraud, control disputes, so you don't come into that 1% of chargeback ratio. Okay. So what can we do? Basically, there's only, well, you have a second option, which would be when a customer is complaining a lot about the quality, about whatever, do a refund before they do a chargeback. Because at least you don't pay for chargeback fees. At least they can send back the product, while with a chargeback, you have all the different fees. So you could do a refund, but in most cases, when a chargeback comes in, it's already too late. So in order to avoid a chargeback, what we recommend is to have 3D secure on all transactions, which is also what Europe thinks, because from the 1st of January of 2021, the PSD2 directive went into place. So as from that moment, all transactions within Europe, with cards issued within Europe, have to be 3D secured. And if we look at the facts of 2021, it for sure helps, because we have seen a decrease of 90% in fraud chargebacks. So compared the first half of 2021 with the first half of 2020, there are 90% less in fraud chargebacks. What we do noticed is that there are way more disputes. Okay, so fraud went down, but disputes went up. But that's also kind of easy easy to explain, because first of all, there were much more online transactions. Second of all, COVID, because due to COVID, a lot of companies had problems with delivery times, but also cancellations of events. So more chargebacks comes in. And also, of course, the consumer get more and more aware that they can do chargeback. So it's kind of normal, but again, it's also kind of, we have to pay attention, because Visa, MasterCard, they don't care if it's a fraud or a dispute chargeback. The chargeback percentage, 1%, is for both. Okay, so even there, we have to try to balance as much as possible. And also for your information, the fraud reasons that we did get in, so the 10%, let's say, that we did get in fraud, was mainly because it were non-EU transactions where no 3D is obligatory, and also MOTO transactions. MOTO transactions are transactions done by telephone or by mail where there is no 3D protection. So it's kind of normal that they keep on coming in, because when there's no 3D, as a merchant, you're never protected against a fraud chargeback. And the other side of the medal, I don't even know if you say it like that in English, but the other side of the medal is that due to this double authentication from the strong customer authentication from the SCA, of course, there's more friction. So a lot more sales were harder to get. So there was a study that up to 30% of sales were lost due to that higher friction. So to almost try to wrap up a little bit, how can we maintain high approval rates even in this PSD2 world? First of all, there are three things that we can do as a starter. So first of all, tokenization. Tokenization is the process of identifying with a unique string. This is a kind of a technical, but let's say the credit card details are linked to a unique string of characters, which is called a token. The token is saved at the merchant level. The credit card details are saved at the PSP level. And then for all future orders, the consumer only has to click on the saved credit card details or the saved payment details, and they can pay with the same credit card. So it's way less friction with this tokenization, which is, by the way, the same principle that the wallets use. So the Apple Pay, Google Pay, PayPal, they all use the same principle of tokenization. So you just have to one click with face recognition or with the finger, you can just do the payments because they use a token. And in this case, instead of being saved the card details at the PSP, they are saved at the Apple Pay, Google Pay. And a third option you have is look into the SEA exemptions. Okay, so this is something that you should discuss with your PSP, with your acquirer, because there are several ways to be able to eliminate the 3D. Okay, so for example, the three main ones would be TRA, which is transaction risk analysis, LVO, low value orders, which are orders between below 30 euros, and recurring payments. For this, however, it is important that your acquirer, your PSP, is below a certain threshold, okay? Because this is not if you have 0.10% of fraud and another merchant has 1, that doesn't influence, because it's the acquirer's fraud level that is taken into consideration for Visa, MasterCard to know if you can offer the TRA or the other SEA exemptions. So always check that, of course, with your PSP. Are they able to, until a certain amount? For example, for TRA, you have three thresholds, which is up to 100 euro, up to 250, or up to 500. Okay, so and based on the fraud level, you can have more or less order value that you can have without 3D secure. Okay, and then to finish with, so if you would choose for MultiSafepay to have your transactions processed, what can we offer in terms of fraud detection? Well, in the first place, it would be the real-time transaction monitoring, the instant fraud analysis. Of course, also, we have a lot of numbers. So 20 years of transactions give like a lot of data. So, and all the transactions that come in are always benchmarked against all those data. And of course, also, we keep on working continuously to always update and improve our algorithms to be able to detect as fast as possible and as good as possible all the fraudulent or possible fraudulent transactions. Thank you. I have 1 minute and a half left, so so it was kind of running at the end, but I hope everybody more or less got the idea of it. Of course, whenever you want to pick my brain, as they tend to say, just write me a mail, just write me here LinkedIn, whatever, a message, a chat, and I will for sure be happy to share more thoughts on it with you. Or if you have questions now in the minute that's left and I can still answer something, then for sure feel free. And otherwise, thanks a lot for assisting today. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Dimitri. Hey. Alles goed. En met jou? Lekker bellen, hè? Perfect, joh. Doen we zo. En hopelijk binnenkort ook terugzien, want het wordt een beetje eentonig, al die webinars. Ciao.